Either that or you are learning how to throw your voice. All right. Did you at least introduce the stream and welcome folks? All right. Well, Dave is out of the ice age. So welcome to another night with Dave and Tana, and Don is the tag along. We are Faith under D/Reconstruction, an opportunity for folks to ask questions as they wrestle with faith, post-faith, no faith, any faith, some faith, a kind of faith. You get the picture. And we want to make sure you understand that all questions are welcome. There is nothing censored. You're welcome to put something here. If you catch us while we're live, you're welcome to throw it in the chat, and we will do our best to address it while we're live. If you do it after the fact, we're happy to either comment in the comments or to actually address it in our next live session. So, did you say ask questions? Ask questions. Well, all right. Or debut. So, Dave, how was Easter for you? The Sunday after Jesus rides an ass through town. Nice. I was never allowed to teach on Palm Sunday because I had always threatened that I was going to teach the sermon when Jesus rides your ass through town. And so I was never actually allowed to teach on Palm Sunday. And I actually think I think that would preach. I mean, come on. Yeah. So our Easter was pretty laid back. I'll let Tana answer how she spent hers, but mine, I spent as a half-elf paladin fighting some dungeons, and in a bit of irony and on brand, at one point I was resurrected. Yeah. I was playing a game called D100 Dungeon, which is a solo RPG, because I was hanging out with all my friends. Tana, how was your Easter? It was fantastic. You didn't see my half elf. I mean, how could you? You know, I was, Tana and I last Monday, we were live. I don't know if you knew that or not, Dave, that we had a show last Monday night, that Tana and I, and we were talking about like one, just how bad of a pastor I am. And a lot of that stems from so many reasons. But one of the reasons we were talking about was that Easter just does not do it for me. It just, I can't match the emotion. And I feel the same way. I feel very similarly with Christmas, right? I just can't match the emotion of my clergy colleagues, or the folks who, jump on social media at sunrise and are like, he is risen. Because my first thought, and this is so utilitarian, my first thought is, yeah, he's done that 1,990 times, because you force him to do it every year. And so this is like, I wonder if Jesus is like, oh my God, get over it. Like, seriously, like, do something else. Yeah. Oh, I thought that was a reference to Sherlock Holmes. I see a prophecy. What about you, Tana? How we didn't, because they knew we were already weird, so they knew there was no chance in pushing me towards that. Like, how do you get a read on that is generous? Yeah, but I mean, that feels like that I don't know that feels generous, right? I feel like that is biting, because it's clear that when one of the three of us say that it's not, it's, but I don't think they would, to be honest. I think that in a one-on-one with a clergy backstage, because let's just call it what it is a stage, I don't think you get the winning souls for Jesus speech. I think you get, this is our one shot until Easter in order to convince people to stay here. Yeah, and I mean it. This is a really tough question. I'm sorry, because here's kind of how I mean it. What is the most generous read we can have of the honest reasoning behind Easter for churches? And it goes to what I was saying. So Tana, you, I think, gave the read that is the that's the front facing voice, right? That, like, that's what people are saying. But let's take what I kind of said about what happens backstage, or the view backstage, and still let's give that an honest, like, not honest, a favorable or generous read on that, because that just feels gross to me. That feels capitalism.
Crickets.
No, it was crickets, because I just got a message from Poker Stiff saying it's all dead air.
Oh.
What?
He said he can't hear anything.
Mm.
But he sees us?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Let's see here. So it's not going to help if no one talks, though. So go ahead and talk.
Oh,
folks.
hey, guys. Here we are.
Go ahead and keep talking as if folks can hear us,
Talk.
and I'll try and solve it while you guys
See
are
what
chatting.
happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I gave my spiel. What about you, Tana?
I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying or if I'm adding to it or not. So, that people, you were saying about families coming together. I'm thinking also about people who, like, maybe this family goes to the church, but maybe their family members don't typically go to church. And so, oh, good. Okay. Do you want to summarize yours real quick? Somebody summarize the question and Dave summarize the response.
So the question was, what is the most favorable or generous way that we can read the typical pastor or the typical church on Sundays?
Yeah. Typical meaning like outreach oriented, consumeristic kind of thing.
Yeah, just trying to be generous about it, because I think we're all very cynical and critique heavy, which I think is valid and I think it's necessary. So I'm not dismissing that, but I'm asking if we were to pause for a moment and give it our best, most generous reading.
Weren't you asking about Easter Sunday, though?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Easter Sunday.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that question because it is helpful to think about people in that way. So I was saying that I think it's a time when people get excited about families coming to church together. And there's a way to sort of celebrate that reconnection, reunification, and just all of those people excited about something. There's an energy to Easter Sunday that's a little bit contagious, rejuvenating. And I think there's something just exciting about that. And so I could see pastors and the music team and all that sort of stuff getting really excited just about those feelings and the potential that it might help people reconnect with the church in some meaningful way.
Yeah. Tana, you started to say something then too.
Yeah, which I think is adding a little bit to what Dave is saying, but maybe not. That in addition to people like reconnecting, maybe they'll also bring relatives that don't typically go to church or have never gone to church or, left the church a long time ago or whatever. So it is also like an outreach opportunity.
Yeah, the only thing with that is, how do we read that in a way that's not like being slimy?
I think that you're asking for the generous reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that the person who is doing said outreach thinks it's slimy.
What do you think they think it is?
They think it's, well, I mean, first of all, I think there's people who are genuinely very much in that evangelical mindset of like what I said earlier, like we have to win souls to Christ, but like they mean it. Like they are like, there are people out here who are going to burn in hell unless I evangelize to them. And so the outreach part of that is like 100% it's the goal. It is the thing, So holidays then are the big show, right? Like it's the opportunity. If somebody's not going to go to church on a typical Sunday just because they feel like it or whatever, they might go on a holiday. And so this is their opportunity to get some people, win some souls to Christ, converts.
I think this is where my cynicism is still just out of control. Mm-hmm. Because it's hard for me to hear that in any meaningful way. Like when you say that, I go, I don't know any pastor that genuinely feels that. I don't know any pastor who loses sleep at night over the souls that are not connected to Jesus. And so for me, like a part that is necessary for that is that someone has to be genuinely devastated to imagine that their neighbor is going to be tortured for eternity, and that this is the one chance I have to care for them and to nurture them and to pull them closer to that salvific moment. And and Dave, maybe your experience is different. Tana, maybe your experience is different. But the pastors I've been around, no matter how fire brimstone, no matter how much they are steeped in that evangelical mindset, I don't know a single pastor that I would say is weeping about the devastation that's going to happen to a huge amount of humanity according to their theology.
Yeah.
Can I?
You're taking the belief. Oh, you're taking the belief too seriously, Don. Stop it. Go ahead, Tana.
Kind of the same. I think maybe I don't know. I think then maybe somewhere in between, like the generous reading and the cynical reading, is the boring reality of life, right? That it is a foregone conclusion in, like, say, seeker sensitive churches. It is a foregone conclusion in their mind that all the outreach they do is the point. It is what they are supposed to be doing, and it is like maybe even ordained by God, and it is like the Christian thing to do.
Yep.
So it's not that in each moment they're like, we need to. I mean, I have known people who do definitely think that way and have said that and have that fervor. But
I know people that attend church that feel that way. I just don't know any pastors.
But I think for pastors and other church staff, I suspect it's more like you have the belief, but like the only example I can think of is when I was doing grant writing for Equal Justice USA. Like, I fervently believed in our mission, and I felt it was really important. And whenever we would get in actual discussions about it, or I would actually get to go see the work in action, that I was like, yeah, well, you know. But when I was actually writing grants to get the money we needed to make the programs happen, I wasn't like, I need to write this grant for our mission. Like, it just, you know.
Yeah, I really appreciate your view, and
Dave is either really good at sitting still or he's
I am frozen, but I like the way I'm frozen, so don't worry about it.
I know. Perpetual contemplation.
Yes. I mean, that's how everyone describes Dave, is perpetual contemplation. Or is it constipation? I think it might be perpetual constipation.
It is that. I have a thought on this, though. Okay, so I'm tapping back into
Dave, before you go, let me just... Yeah, before you go, hold on. I just want to put what Poker Stiff said. Outreach on Easter and Christmas can be very artificial in evangelicalism. Well-dressed, best behavior, doing the utmost, putting on the best show possible to reach the most. This should be every Sunday. Yeah, and I think this is where I think Poker Stiff's touching on kind of my own cynicism here. Is like, if you truly believe that, if you truly felt that way, then you would be blood, sweat, and tears every single Sunday. And not just every Sunday, every single day of the week. Like, if I genuinely believed all of my neighbors were heading towards an oppressive, torturous eternity, I would be doing everything I could possible to care for them and help them navigate that today. I wouldn't wait until Easter. In the same way as, like, pastors get upset that people wait till Easter to attend church, the fact that pastors and churches wait till Easter to care for church or members of church is also absurd. So we lost Dave. Oh, Dave's back. You there, Dave?
Number 2.
You're number 2. Yeah. You are
still video's not working?
Your video is not working, but your voice is. So speak from the deep.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. So I'll just say that when I was trying to tap back into my own mind when I was a church planter and when we would put on Easter service. So I got into it for what I would say are genuine reasons. What I cared about was doing justice and all the things that, you know, we've connected on in the past, things we've talked about on these lives. And then when it came to Easter Sunday, when it came to Easter Sunday, I got into that consumer mode. What does that say? Murder.
Yeah.
And I got in, like,
Chat's
I
got
couldn't
jokes
help
tonight.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't help but get into a mode of, I wonder if this will bring someone new to the church.
Right.
And that wasn't about their salvation. That was about numbers so that the church would be, quote unquote, sustainable.
Right.
And so for myself, to be honest, there was that's where I always found a dichotomy where I would be like, I'm sick of the show, of the consumerism, and I have to call it out, and it frustrates me, and I want to talk about the real thing. Why do we deny the resurrection in our daily life? And I want more people to come to the church. Both were true. And I'm going to try to use a different thing, so I'll be right back.
Okay. I do think that there is... I think I'm bouncing back and forth that where my struggle is, right? I think that there is a genuine desire to minister to people. I just don't think it has to do with salvation for most pastors. It has to do with being able to demonstrate that our church ministers to more people than your church. Or that in some way the number of people that your church ministers to is a large enough number that you're proud of it. And I'm not just saying that out of like competitiveness or something. I'm saying that out of like lots of personal conversations with pastors. They would never articulate it that way. Like they would never say it that succinctly I just think that, however, they would say that it is important to them and to the denomination and to the other church attenders to show that the number of people they're ministering to is increasing. I just don't think it's the same as the number of people are increasing, and therefore the amount of justice that can be done is greater. The amount of influencing systematic oppression can be more powerfully addressed, right? Like, I don't think that there's that piece attached to it. It's literally just the local impression and possibly the own personal, I don't know. I'm struggling a little bit to describe it. And I think that's just some of my own cynicism. Maybe I've completely misread all the pastors. Not all the pastors, but the vast majority of pastors I've met throughout the years. That is a lovely picture of something, Dave.
I see an arm.
I just am having technical difficulties, and I don't know why. Oh, okay. Here we go. There we go. Hi, guys.
Dave, you missed it. Tana and I had one of the most profound discussions ever. I think we changed. Yeah, we changed.
Whatever.
We solved Christianity.
Yeah. Tana described and explained the Trinity so clearly that we're all Trinitarian now.
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I missed it.
I do have to tell you a story. Let me tell you a story real quick. It's been like 20 years, but I went to see Rob Bell. He had a private, like a small pastor session, and a friend of mine knew someone who knew someone and took me, right? And so there's like 25 of us, and we're hanging out with Rob Bell. And this was right before Love Wins came out. So this is before he was super cool, right? So
I
this
knew
was
Rob Bell
Yeah,
before he
right.
was cool.
that's right. This is 100%.
He was cool with Numa. Don't even. He
Right.
was cool
No,
with
he
Numa.
was, but Love Wins hadn't come out, but it had been
Right.
released to reviewers, and he was getting thrashed, right? And he was
Yes.
devastated. I mean,
He's getting farewelled.
yeah. But anyhow,
That's right.
he was.
That's
yeah.
right.
But anyhow, so we're in this session, and he's talking, and he's having very similar problems to you, Dave. Just all these technical difficulties, and he's just frustrated with it. There was only a handful of us there, but he had like, you know, a slideshow and stuff he wanted to share with us. And so finally he's like, all right, screw it. I'm not doing it. And so he starts talking, and he's talking about the value or the meaning of Trinity and how Trinitarian thinking is beautiful or good or whatever. Yeah. And all of a sudden everyone starts cheering, and he just stops. And someone goes, the video came back on. And he's like,
oh my God.
No, here's the best. He's like, damn it. And we're like, what? And he's like, I really thought, oh my God, what'd I say? I need to write that down. Everyone, I did it. I solved the Trinity. All these pastors who are here on personal invite, these colleagues of mine, they were all like, yes. He's like, my immediate arrogance went to, oh my God, what'd I say? I have to write this down. And the electronics isn't working, so it's probably not recording. So I need to remember what was being said. And he's like, and you guys were just cheering. And you guys were just cheering that the PowerPoint came on. He's like, wow. He's like, I'm just gonna take my humble pie right now and go home.
First time anybody ever cheered for PowerPoint.
It was the funniest moment, and he was super funny about it, and even owned like his own kind of like moment where he was like, I did it. I did it. I said something.
I think, okay. So it's a really just great example of, I don't think that you can get the ego out of the pulpit.
No.
I don't think you can.
Not. No. If
and
you're willing to stand up and profess and teach something ancient, regardless of whether it's divine or not, teach something ancient, right. Teach it in a manner that holds authority and tries to compel other people to agree with your assessment of something that is ancient and unprovable, you have to have arrogance.
Well, so arrogance... Okay, yeah, like there's arrogance.
I'm sorry, arrogance, not arrogance, but ego or confidence, yeah.
Ego, there's always a part of yourself that's like, there's something about yourself that gets fulfilled there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know anyone who gets up and does public speaking where they're trying to convey an idea or a concept that when they get positively reassured aren't edified by that, right? It's
right.
And that's kind of, you wouldn't keep getting up front of a group of people and teaching if you didn't have confidence that what you were saying had value.
True. Yeah, I think this is where like the whole thing is so complicated, because there's within the framework of evangelicalism, anything associated with like pride is bad. So anything where you would feel good about yourself for a gift that you have or something you've cultivated is inherently bad.
Again, something I don't think anyone believes backstage.
I did.
I think that, but you're also...
I had that.
Good.
I had it in my psyche. So like I was trying to shed it, but it was still there. And I think that it was a hard balance to think about. This is not about us. It's about Jesus. And it is all about us, because we've got to put on, if it were just about Jesus, it wouldn't matter what we did. It wouldn't matter if the guitars were plugged in. It wouldn't matter if the microphones worked. It wouldn't matter if I wore what I'm wearing now compared to something, like it matters. And so like it was just
that Tana was yawning in the middle of your concept.
I know, it's not all that interesting. It's just that it's like, it's always this, and I don't know about the people in the crowd are not experiencing this, but the people on the stage are. I believe a lot of people, hopefully, I'm hoping that this is true, that people are torn. You know? Do you
Yeah.
not think
Yeah,
that's
no.
happening?
I, I, I think that the longer you stay in it, where you are in a role where you're in a typical church where your goal is to grow the church, to make it whatever, to have a building, to have an influence in the community. I don't think you can stay in that space for more than a few years without that shift. I think that if you maintain that perspective, you will either reject the form in which church takes and push against it and fight against it and find yourself on the outside, or you just leave. I don't think that it's I shouldn't say it's not possible. I am certain someone out there breaks that rule, but I don't think it's likely. I mean, you had Shane Claiborne on your podcast just a few weeks ago, and I haven't heard it yet. But Shane sounds different to me today than he did when he started.
Totally.
And he is way more evangelical today. Even when he is pushing back on things, he does it in such a manner that is at least not overly offensive to the evangelical mind. Whereas when I first started hearing Shane, he was like, I don't care what anyone thinks.
Yep, for sure.
And again, that's not a finger wag at him. I think he's such an important figure in evangelicalism and for so many people who have moved through that. But I think he's an example to me where you can see or you can hear, if you listen to early stuff versus later stuff, a shift. And I think, Dave, for you, I agree. You probably didn't hold that. Like, you probably were fighting against that and wrestling with that, and look at the outcome. And
right.
And so I think that you kind of prove to some degree that point. I think, to some degree, I prove that point because
definitely
I'm refusing to do things the way that, like, I think I upset the person that was both of our church planning director, because he perceived that if I were to teach on Sundays instead of have discussions, that we would have had a larger church, or we would have had a large church. And he kept,
because that was the metric. That was what mattered.
Correct. And he was like, Don, you're such a gifted teacher. Why, if you just taught even just once a month, Don, just once a month, you did a teaching and you invited people, you guys would grow so fast. And I was just like, I have no interest.
It's just, I know. Yeah, I mean, because the model is a capitalistic model. Ultimately, my belief, and we talked about this years ago, Don, my belief was that in order for a church to remain revolutionary, which is essential for a church, for a community patterned after the way of Jesus, it's essential. It has to be revolutionary, or else it's institutional. For a church, in order for a church to remain revolutionary, it cannot last, I think, past 5 years, because once you move beyond that point, you're no longer angsty. You're no longer like trying to figure out what's really going on in the city. You are part of the fabric of it. Yeah. So now you've become part of the system instead of like constantly calling the system to shift and revolutionize and reform or be destroyed, because that's ultimately what the church is a call to systems that are oppressive to people, which are most systems that we make in this planet. And I think especially in our society where Christianity is the dominant religion, to go past 5 years, I think you're ultimately setting yourself up for institutional imperial Christianity, and forget Jesus at that point. It's really all about what we've been talking about the whole time.
So we just spent some time talking about what is the most generous, or what is a generous way to read Easter from a pastoral point. Let's do this. No. That wasn't a pushback against you, Dave. I'm with you. So in fact, you guys are way less cynical than I am. So I'm feeling like the cynical one at the moment. How'd that feel? I don't know how. Whiskey out the nose has got to be difficult.
It's not. I'm still sick.
His sinuses are clear.
Sinuses are so clear at the moment. Oh, okay. All right. So let's then do this. What is all right, before we do it, let me give Poker Stiff what he has. When I was on the Covenant board, we used to annual reviews of church plants. There was a church that lost members every year, no new members in 4 years, no new baptisms in 3 years. Honestly,
amen.
That should be common, right? That should be the norm
For sure.
And if not normal, acceptable, right? All right.
Yeah.
So let's try this. What is the most generous reading of the actual historical Easter for our world today?
What do you mean?
Well, I can give my answer first, and that would probably help.
Go for it.
I don't think Easter has anything to do with salvation. I think Easter has to do with safety. And I think...
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
By Easter, you mean the resurrection?
Yeah,
I just mean what we typically celebrate, death through resurrection.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay. Yep.
And so for me, I'd say what makes Easter valuable today is that Jesus demonstrated empire has no desire for peace. Empire has no desire for well-being. Empire has no desire for care. Empire has no desire for neighbor. Empire only has a desire for power. And that is demonstrated through the fact that a man from Nazareth, what good comes from Nazareth? Like this man from Nazareth who taught people to love their neighbor, to do good, outdo one another in showing honor. I know that's Paul's phrase, but Paul got it from, I would argue, the teachings of Jesus. That taught that we are to make sure the marginalized, the oppressed, that they have safety, that they are protected, they are cared for, they are fed, they are clothed, they are visited, that they are affirmed, that they are loved. That type of behavior is actually the true threat to empire. Not militaries, not new regimes, not political maneuvering, but justice. Justice is the true threat to empire. And when we see that empire does not do well with someone who gets a group of people convinced and compelled that the idea that justice and mercy and compassion is the way to fight empire, it murders them.
Yeah.
And then the powerful tradition around Jesus is that didn't even fucking work. Because he came back. And whether you believe that as a physical resurrection or you believe that as his reputation continued as if he was present after that. And it didn't matter. You could kill the human, but you would not kill the reputation. You would not kill the teachings. You could not kill. You could not murder the hope that was given. Think about MLK.
Yeah.
Could not murder.
Right.
Right. And that, I would argue, is the reading, the healthiest or the most generous reading that I could give. I maybe not the most. If I sat and thought about it longer, maybe I could come up with some more nuance. But that's what I would say is important today, regardless of what you think about evangelicalism, regardless of what you think about the religious right, regardless of what you think about Christianity. That's what Easter is about. All right, your turns.
Nice. Tana. Nothing.
I got nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the most generous reading is similar in that I think if I'm to look at Easter as the story of Jesus rising from the dead, as Easter Sunday, or just the whole story, the whole lead up, the Palm Sunday, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, all of that. If I'm to look at that the most generously, I would say that it is a story similar to what you say, that like empire is not ultimately as powerful as it believes it is. And somebody who is seemingly oppressed, is seemingly outnumbered, is seemingly overpowered, says, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my people would be fighting. But as it is, they're not fighting. And so I'm willing to die because I have more hope than domination of the world. And yeah, I think that is a beautiful story. Beautiful. I think it's far more powerful than people give. This is not even me being generous. I think this is me being what I do believe is true. I think it makes me very sad when people look at Jesus and the story of him cynically and condescendingly. That's the thing that makes me the most sad about evangelicals, is that they have lumped Jesus in with evangelicals, that in any way he's connected to what they say he is.
I was telling Tana, I was talking to my friend Ken, and I was telling him about some of my frustration with some of evangelicalism, where it's like, throwing Jesus away, throwing everything away by rejecting evangelicalism, just throwing everything away. And not that that's not okay. I think that it's healthy for a lot of people to do that.
Absolutely. Yes.
But I also think that sometimes it's done without any real consideration. And that's the part that I shouldn't say upsets me. It's more upset in the sense of not like makes me angry, but upsets as in like, I think that's sad. And
whose fault is that?
Well, you know what Ken said? That blew me away. He said, that's so evangelical of them. And his point is that evangelicalism presents itself as the only true way to think about God.
Yep.
And so when they reject evangelicalism, they reject God because they're evangelical in their approach. So therefore, this is the only way to think about God. So we have to reject it all.
Yep. And that's what I feel that way about atheism a lot. Yep.
Yeah. I just found that to be such a poignant statement.
Yeah. That's really good.
So what do you guys think then Easter Sunday should look like? Like if we were to take that generous reading or that, and I would argue kind of what you said, Dave, I don't think it's necessarily generous. I just think it's accurate.
I think we agree with what we said, both of us. Yeah. Right.
Right. But what should or could Easter Sunday? Like, what do you imagine? Like, do you really think Jesus is like, oh man, I really hope attendance is up this Easter? Like, definitely. Is that really a thought? Is that a thought by God, by Jesus? Like, oh man, maybe this is the year more people attend church. I just don't imagine. If anything, I think it's like Jesus looks down and sees these pomp and circumstances and these efforts to bedazzle, and Jesus is like, oof. Why are you not marching? Like, why are you not standing in the streets of socioeconomically deprived communities? Like, if you want to celebrate my resurrection,
I don't
why?
think we'd have Easter.
I just
You don't think?
Yeah,
we'd,
well,
say,
I just
say
think
more about that, Tana.
Yeah, go ahead, Tana.
We would just continue to observe the Jewish holidays and be like a sect of Judaism rather than be like, oh, we're just going to pretend that Judaism doesn't exist and start from scratch.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that would be a big piece, and I think then what that parlays really nicely into is in Dave's podcast that came out this morning. He talks about the Seder he was at, where they talked about the narrow ways, right? And I think we would. So I don't know if you want to share some of that or not, Dave. I know it's probably very private between you and your podcast listeners, but not sure if you want to share that.
All
with
7. No,
That's
we gotta.
that's-
Man,
That's 2 more than we have.
no, I'm kidding. No, we do. We're doing. One of the things, you just stay with it and people listen. I will say that for me, the Seder, talking about narrow places, which is what each time I've gone, that's been the conversation. I just couldn't help but think about Jesus saying, enter through the narrow, like take the narrow road. And it's interesting for him to say, like, go through Egypt. In order for you to find your salvation, you've got to go through Egypt. And I think that's what he was doing. That's what he was inviting people into. The distinction between that and the broad road, I would say Christianity, evangelicalism is the broad road. So if we were to do Easter justice, then we wouldn't go to church on Easter. We would do some kind of, our lives would be different. Our lives would be different. If we were doing Easter differently, our whole lives would be different. And I think that's where the thought was coming from for me when I was looking back at my last Easter sermon was, well, this whole thing is just not Jesus. This whole thing that we do is not connected to Jesus. It's just, and that's not even me being cynical. It's just me being like, just straight up. How can we say this? And what part of what we do on Sunday resembles this first century Jewish rabbi, prophet, revolutionary?
And let's say we're genuinely concerned about the well-being of people on Easter.
Yeah.
Is it the people showing up at our churches on Easter Sunday that are the ones that are in genuine need of saving from the oppression of the world? And it's just not. I mean, not typically, at least.
Certainly not in white evangelical churches.
That's fair. Yeah, agreed. All right, let me get your thoughts on this, guys. Too often what we wrestle against in flesh and blood is principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness of this world against spiritual wickedness, which is specifically and explicitly in the church, or is the church.
Amen, Poker Steph.
I don't think I caught the whole thing.
Too often, what we wrestle against in flesh and blood is principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness of this world against spiritual wickedness, which is specifically, and explicitly, it is specifically and explicitly is the church or in the church. I think if I'm reading this the way I think, Poker Stiff, you're intending, is that so much of what is the problem in this world is the church. Is those who are holding on to power in order to maintain their grip. And so finding places to get in bed with politics in order to manipulate or maintain strongholds.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you could be the religion of the culture, especially the religion of the empire, and avoid that.
I always think that that's such an interesting dichotomy that I don't think any of us can really. Well, I am incapable of. Maybe the two of you can. I often wonder if Christianity was to do what I believe Jesus actually intended it to do. And therefore, not even Christianity, just Judaism was to do.
Yeah.
Which was
Right.
to basically overthrow the oppressors of this world and bring equity, equality, and peace to all humans. How is that ruled in a way that doesn't just create a cyclical issue, right? Who was it? I think it was Calvin attempted a theocracy, right? And that ended up in fire, literally, for some people.
Pretty well.
Like what? And even Israel's own theocracy at times was just tragic. And like, it's like, is the ideal, is Jesus's ideals ever possible? I want to say yes, because I believe in him. But then I've met people.
Well, I guess I would say yes, but I would say that we haven't seen it because we attach Jesus to Christianity, and he's not in there.
Yeah. Tana?
Like he's not connected to this. Yeah.
All right, Tana. Go ahead, Dave.
I just want to say, like, I feel like if anyone's looking for Jesus in Christianity, I think what they're finding is the antithesis of him. And so I think it is necessary, if you're looking for the way of Jesus, to leave Christianity entirely. And I don't mean just evangelicalism, because Christianity invented anti-Semitism, not evangelicalism. I think that in order to find that first century person, it requires like a total like leaving that behind and finding something that will never get the kind of publicity that you'd maybe want based on the way we were raised to think about it. But that's my thought. Tana, go ahead. I mean, Don, what were you going to ask Tana?
I was going to read this. Amanda said, if you can get people worrying about whether they're being Christian right, quote unquote, praying enough, reefing the Bible. I don't know if that's smoking it or what, but reefing the Bible
I think
enough.
It is, yeah. 100%.
Reading the Bible enough, the correct way, etc. And now we're left on a cliffhanger waiting for part 2.
I'm still thinking about reefing the Bible.
You would be, you heathen. We used to play Bible ad libs.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
And we would take we'd take an entire like pericope or passage, and then we'd remove like random verbs, adjectives, and names. And then we would
such a great idea.
Go to Detroit.
Yeah, that was one of the ones.
Such a good idea.
Yeah, truly Frank was good to Detroit was one of the verses that came out of it that has stuck with us. And that's been almost 20 years, hasn't it, Tana?
Yeah.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close to 20 years.
That's good.
Yep.
Yeah. This past, yesterday, Dave marked 20 years of Agape Lunch for us. Starting the lunch after church. Yeah. So 20 years. It's taken various forms and.
All right, here's part 2. So let me read part 1 again. If you can get people worrying about whether they're being Christian right, quote unquote, praying enough, reefing the Bible enough. I'm sorry, Amanda. I know you meant reading, but reefing is so much better. Reefing the Bible enough, the correct way, etc., etc. Then you can dilute or completely negate the actual power of Christ or Messiah in the world, spiritually versus spirituality. That's spot on. I think
Yeah.
that
Yes. Yeah.
we and this is where, I mean, Christianity might be the greatest gaslighter, right? Talk about moving the goalpost, except moving the crucifixion or crucifix, moving the crucifix.
Don, do you remember when Chris was on and he was talking about how he actually hated when corporations started to get behind Black Lives Matter because it was the corporatization of a movement and then it kind of made it less potent.
Yes.
And that's what it sounds like, kind of what Amanda is saying, like we've corporatized church and so we've made it less potent. You know, if it's all about a business and rituals and traditions doesn't feel like it quite covers it.
Well,
But
can I try something, Tana? I
Yeah.
think you'll.
sure.
Yeah,
I think that food for thought was more potent until Jam City.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
I was actually thinking that earlier when Dave was saying about how something becomes the fabric, like the institutionalized and becomes a fabric of the city. I was thinking about food for thought with that.
Let me explain it for our audience. So Food for Thought is a nonprofit that Tana and I and some other folks started here in Toledo to address food insecurity throughout the city. And the first several years, it just grew by leaps and bounds. People getting connected, donations. We couldn't even explain how we were able to feed the thousands of people we were able to feed.
Loaves and
In fact,
fishes.
Yeah, in fact, I think my first interview on a news station, they asked me about it, and I said, all I can say is loaves and fishes. And I didn't mean that in any kind of ironic way. I genuinely, we couldn't understand how our little hodgepodge group had created such a movement in the city to get so much food, right?
Yeah.
And after we kind of had done that for a couple of years, Tana and I had moved away from the organization, and a new executive director who I think was like 2 steps away from you, Tana, like 2 generations away from you.
Yeah, there was somebody else in between.
They were very much of the mindset of giant promotion, giant, etc. And so they created this thing because we started, a lot of what we did was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every Saturday morning with the people in the city. And so they started a thing called Jam City, which was this huge event that drew all of these millennials, all of these businesses and stuff, and held it at the local arena, and it was huge. And I think that's when, in my opinion, and other people might disagree completely with it, I think that Food for Thought lost its potency because it was no longer this kind of grassroots movement of people saying it's not appropriate that we have neighbors in our community who are hungry, and we're not going to allow that to happen. And then shifted to let's get the news out here. Let's get all these celebrities, local celebrities, to show up to celebrate what we've done and make themselves all feel better about their contribution to the well-being of their neighbors while not actually feeding a single person themselves. So if at all, that's what Amanda is referencing, and Tana, you were kind of referencing.
Yeah,
I couldn't
that's
agree
good.
more. I think that's
that's
absolutely
so
spot on.
That for me is a great note to end on. I totally agree with that kind of thinking. I have to go put my 9-year-old to bed.
All right. Well, let's all wrap up real quick. So anything, Tana, you want to say before we jump off?
Not coherently and efficiently.
Okay. Dave, anything you would like to say to folks before we?
Happy Easter.
There you go. Go and be the resurrection, right? Go
Happy
and
Passover.
be the
That's still going on.
Yeah, is Passover happy?
Amen to that.
Yes. Thursday ends.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Truth.
friends, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. We hope to see you guys next Monday. Dave, thank you again for all that you do. Tana, thank you for all that you do and who you are. And hope everyone has a great week. See you next week. Bye.
Much love, friends. Bye.